So now let's get into traps and failed two-legged pullbacks. And so the whole idea of these is they are, of course, always with the overall trend, and they are a two-legged pullback to the wrong direction that has started to fail. And so what we have is we have an overall downtrend, right? And then it starts to make a pullback in the upwards direction, and then that pullback has a two-legged pullback. And then once it makes that attempt to go higher, that's not a trade we want to be in, right? Because the overall trend is down. And so that's a two-legged pullback we're going to skip on. And then we wait to see if it develops with a bearish candle or a good looking setup to short off of that in expectation that it is going to continue with that overall downtrend. And so here, this is a pretty solid setup in terms of a two-legged pullback. We have a pretty strong down move here, and then we have an up move here, and then here is that two-legged pullback, and you can see it starts to attempt to go higher here by making a break above that previous high. Now, this candle right here, this entry, this signal bar, this is not the greatest of candles, I will say that, but you pretty much have everything else going for you. The overall trend is down. We're bouncing right off the EMA. We attempted to go up, and the EMA is now being resistance. And then our setup is this failed two-legged pullback here that we're attempting to short off of. And then our signal bar, it is a little bit of a reversal bar. If we kind of look at it, it opened here, sold off a tiny bit, went up, and then sold off and closed about at the middle. And so our idea here is if we put a sell stop below here and the market then decides to open the next candle and then sell off, that's still a reversal pattern. It's essentially that lower high and then that failed two-legged pullback. And so this is where we would want to potentially put a short in and then go short from there. Now, this is a little bit more of an aggressive failed two-legged pullback, but I did want to talk about this one. And so now let's go into another more clear example. So what we have here is another failed two-legged pullback to the short side. And just looking at the overall trend, we are basically really big trend down. And then the market decided to do a little flat. And then we started to make a attempt higher. And so what we're going to look at there is because the overall trend is down, we're going to look to see this move higher, essentially make a two-legged pullback, and then fail because the overall trend is down, right? And so zooming in on this, we can see that it has that high there, that one leg down, that second leg down, and then it makes that attempt higher. And so all it has to do is make a one tick move higher for us to say that, okay, it's made that attempt to go long off a two-legged pullback, and we're going to look to see that fail. And so initially, if we were looking to think, oh, maybe this is going to go in an uptrend and we're going to take a two-legged pullback, we're not going to take this two-legged pullback because this signal bar is bad. And then we had this initial huge sell off here. And so that's going to kind of say that, hey, the overall trend is kind of down. So you're going to look to have attempts to go long fail more often than not. And so here, as soon as we see the market make a tiny break higher here, we can put our sell stop below the low of the signal bar that would be for the two-legged pullback. And so that would be this bar right here. And so then we just put our low here. And so the signal bar for our failed two-legged pullback is an outside bar, right? It's bigger than the bar before on both ends. But because this is a trap, that is okay, because we're looking for the market to break higher and then reverse on people and cause a large amount of movement. And that's what happens here is it reverses on them and then we get our scalp out. And this is a great setup because we have a really good reversal bar that we would enter in on. And then we're below the EMA, the overall trend is down, resistance is nowhere near in sight. And so that is a really solid trade. So here we have another solid entry. The trend is clearly down right now. And so what we're looking at is we are looking at here is a new high. So we have a one-legged pullback, a two-legged pullback. It makes an attempt to go higher. And then because this two-legged pullback is counter trend, even though that this is a good signal bar, we're not going to take that, right? We are looking for trades to the short side. And so that's why we always want to be trading with the overall trend, because it'll keep us out of potential bad trades. Now, this trade was bad because it was at the wrong side of the EMA, but sometimes they will be on the right side of the EMA. And so this will keep you out of those. And then what we look for is this is a good signal bar or a good bearish bar. And so we're going to put an entry below that, expecting the market, if it breaks below that, that it is going to sell off. And so what we have is for this trade, right, we have our overall trend is down. So that makes our setup strong there. The EMA, we're pretty close to the EMA. The market is pretty volatile right now. So this is essentially close enough to the EMA. And then our setup is that failed two-legged pullback here. And then our signal bar is really bearish and strong. And then in terms of distance from the resistance or support, we definitely wouldn't want to be trying to break through this low here, because that would be really far from the EMA as well. So that would be just kind of like multiple things of resistance or support working against us, but we would definitely be scalping out before that level. So we are safe in that sense. So that is a pretty solid setup. So moving on to the next setup, there's actually one right here. And so this is, again, we're in that overall downtrend, right? This is a really big downtrend. And so because traps sometimes work very quickly, what we have here is, here's our two-legged pullback, and then it attempts to go higher right here. And so this is that outside bar again. And so what we're going to do with this trade is we're going to have our sell stop right below this bar, expecting that when it breaks higher, if it breaks below, it's going to trap and sell off really quickly. And so that's what we're going to look for with this kind of setup. And if we go short here, we have plenty of room. There's potential support here. And so we have plenty of room to get out before that. And so that's okay there. We're at the EMA. We're definitely making lower highs here, which is good for our trend as well. Our signal bar, we're going to assume our signal bar, because if it goes up and then breaks off down here, we're going to assume our signal bar is going to be really strong in our direction. And then of course that resistance or support, we have plenty of room to that. And so that was a really good trade. This is actually a lower high example right here that you could short below this bar, but I would say don't take this because you have this support right here. So other than that, this would have been a good lower high to go in off of, expecting it to break below this bar. And if it did, it would sell out. And you can see it did sell out there because the trend is so bearish. But because there are these support levels here, I would avoid taking that, especially when you just made a winning trade right here. So here we have a pretty good looking setup to the short side again. So the overall trend is down. So we're going to look for reversals of the trend to the short side. And so what we have here is essentially the market does a little bit of an uptrend here, makes a high, and then does a two-legged pullback. And we're going to look for that to fail. And so this is a two-legged pullback that we definitely would have not entered because it's a inside bar right here for that signal bar. And so we would have avoided that. And then once we saw this candle form, we would have wanted to put a sell stop right below this, expecting this two-legged pullback to fail and keep going down. And so the overall trend to look at our checklist is down. The EMA, we are right at the EMA, but selling below it. So that's in our favor. We have a good failed two-legged pullback as our setup. Our signal bar is a really nice bearish bar that opened here and then closed after it attempted to go higher. And then our support and resistance, there's maybe a little bit of support here, but that's really not big enough to cause too much of a worry, especially because we do have an overall solid trend to the downside. And so this trade works out really nicely for us as another trap. So here we have a trap that pushes the market to the upside. So we have an overall solid uptrend here, pretty good channel. And then zooming in on this, we have our EMA is pretty much right where the bars are forming, which is great. And then our two-legged pullback, our failed two-legged pullback is right here. So we have a little down move and then one pullback here and then another pullback here. So that is our two-legged pullback, and then it makes a tiny attempt lower here, and we're going to look for that to fail. And so this is one of those times where we have an outside bar, and because it's a trap, we're going to put our buy stop right above the candle right here, expecting that if the market, after it has broken lower, if it reverses, it's going to trap those people and the market is going to then shoot up from there. And so that's why we want to get in right here instead of after this bar is forming. We want to get in when those people are being trapped and when the market has decided to reverse, because these reversals can happen very quickly sometimes. And if we waited for this candle to form, entering up here would have been too close to this potential resistance up here, and we would have avoided the trade. And so that's why we want to enter in here, because it is essentially the trap is still working in our favor, and it allows us to get in closer to the EMA as well. So here we have another example that traps people and pushes the market up. So first off, our trend is to the upside. We are currently pretty much at the EMA and at the bottom of this channel, which is really good as well for our overall trend. And then what we have is we have a down move and then a one-legged pullback and a two-legged pullback. And so this, because the bars are really big right now, it's kind of hard to see that this does make a tiny bit of a break lower. So what we're going to do is we're going to enter right above this bar as it has made this failed two-legged pullback, expecting this market to continue to the upside here. And so this bullish bar right here is really solid for a trap to the long side right here. And so this is a really good example where right here we have a two-legged pullback, which would have been great to catch because we are in that uptrend. But you can see here it's an inside bar, and so we wouldn't have actually taken that trade. But now that we have a two-legged pullback here to the short side that failed, it still allows us to jump in on this move right here. And so that's how all these setups really work together, is either you'll have a two-legged pullback that works or a failed two-legged pullback that works in your favor, or a higher low that ends up working in your favor. And so there's really a lot of ways to essentially enter in on the same move. And so that's what these three setups do for us, is they allow us to get in on multiple possibilities for when the market is as either being choppy or not giving us the right setup. And so that's why you should skip on when you see two-legged pullbacks like this, because maybe the market will form a failed two-legged pullback that will look like this, that will still allow you to get a scalp out, or maybe it'll just form a lower high that'll allow you to still enter on. And so be patient when a setup essentially doesn't work like this one, or it doesn't form the way we want, because there are always other opportunities that will potentially get us an entry into the market. So let's look at one last example here. And so the market has been in a huge sell-off, so it is a little easier to find really solid looking trades to the short side. And so here we have an overall downtrend at the moment, and then here is our setup we're going to look at. So what we're looking at here is the market has made a sell-off, and then it has made a move up. And because the overall trend is down, right, we're going to look for this two-legged pullback right here to fail. And so it makes an attempt higher. It has a great signal bar here. It makes a really strong move to the upside. And then we have a very bearish bar forming here. And so that is that two-legged pullback, making an attempt higher, right? And then failing here. And so we're going to short as we see that bearish bar, expecting it to continue with the overall downtrend. And so we're going to put our sell order right below here. We're pretty much at the EMA. Our signal bar is extremely bearish, which is really good for us. And then support and resistance, maybe you could say that's here or down here. Definitely if it's here, we have room to scalp out. And so this is another really good looking trade. Now, all these examples that we have looked through in the last 3 sections are really solid examples. And so what you should try and aim for is all your trades looking similar to these. Now, not every trade is going to be slightly different. That's the hardest part about trading in the stock market, is every trade is always different. So you can't have a perfect picture for everything. But hopefully through these examples, you will start to get an idea of what a good setup looks like. Now, in terms of what a bad setup looks like, it'll essentially be a trade like one of these that won't have something on the checklist that we have gone over. Hopefully throughout this course, I have made that somewhat clear in talking about a few examples that weren't great. Essentially how this trading strategy works is you want everything to be in alignment. And first off, you want to start with the overall trend, right? The overall trend is down. And then you want to see where are you in relation to the EMA. That is kind of like the medium trend. And then the setup we have, that is kind of our smaller trend. And then the signal bar is our mini trend. That kind of shows us where we are right now. And then resistance and support, that's just kind of to keep you out of hairy situations. And so always be thinking about that with this trading strategy. Where are we overall? Where are we kind of in the middle? And then where are we right now? And so all of those should be in alignment. If you have it like this, where there's 2 in alignment and then 1 is the opposite, that can cause you to have a trade that is not going to go in the right direction.